Hi, and welcome back to another First Chapter Friday with the Green Elementary Library. I have one of our books from the COBAA grant, and this book is entitled Saving Wonder, and it's by Mary Knight. It is an AR book, quiz number 179767. It is a book level of 5.5 and it's worth 9 points. So, Chapter 1, or in this case, Chapter C. Ever since I can remember, Pawpaw's been giving me words. Every week a new word, beginning with A and running through the alphabet twice a year. It's a perfect system, or so Pawpaw says. It's as if the calendar folks and the alphabet folks planned it that way. He gives me the word on a Sunday, and I'm supposed to use it every day of the week. Some words I take a shine to more than others. Lackadaisical is one of my favorites. I like the way it rolls off my tongue. The kids at school up in Fraley'sburg aren't too keen on my words, so Pawpaw and I mostly use them at home here in Wonder Gap. Sometimes when I let one slip, they make fun of me. Now that I'm in the 7th grade, it's even worse. Like when Carl Jenkins dropped his lunch tray next to me and his fruit cocktail shot out in every direction, all mixed up with his spaghetti and meatballs. When I looked down and saw what had happened, I blurted out, "Gee, Carl, that's a verifiable mess you got there." Well, he was on me like a coyote in a barnyard of chickens. I think it was that black eye that caused Pawpaw to acquiesce. First word this year. No use using them where they ain't working, he said, agreeing to keep my words to ourselves. So what's the use of using them at all? I said, holding a pack of frozen peas over my right eye and feeling downright belligerent. Second word this year. Well, Curley, words are your way out of the holler, he said. Papa always says that, even though he's never asked me if I wanted to go. I love my Pawpaw, so it's hard to argue with him. Besides, he's all I've got. My daddy died in a coal mining accident right after my little brother Zeb was born. I hardly remember him. 4 years later, Ma and Zeb were gone too, swallowed up by a river of sludge. It had been raining hard all week, and the coal company's slurry pond at the top of the mountain, over from ours, broke through its walls. A thick stream of black mud came cascading down the holler, covering everything in its path. Ma and little Zeb were winding their way back home from old Ida's house along the creek bed. I guess they couldn't get out of the way fast enough. Pawpaw came to get me at school that afternoon. Your Ma and little Zeb are gone, was all he said. Just you and me now, Curly. We're all we've got. Pawpaw said was Ma's paw. He's been staying with us since my daddy died, Pawpaw being a widower and all. For the rest of the day after Pawpaw told me, I simmered in a world of hurt, wondering how Ma could have up and left me like that, taken Zeb with her and not me. It wasn't until we showed up at the Donnelly house for the viewing that I realized they weren't just gone, but dead. I know that sounds weird, but Pawpaw says our minds try to protect us from a painful truth for as long as they can. Pawpaw also says I kicked his shins black and blue that day, but that he deserved it for not finding a better way to tell me that terrible news. My mother and brother were found on the banks of Miller Creek. I've often wondered what caught Sheriff Whitaker's eye. Was it the pale hand of my mother reaching high out of the muck, like she knew the answer? I'm told she was clinging tight to little Zeb in her other arm. Ida Donnelly and her sister Rosa May, took over cleaning up the bodies. They washed them in an old clawfoot tub in their backyard. Pawpaw said he'd forever be obliged to them for that. He didn't think he could have done it himself and gone on living. They put Ma and little Zeb in a coffin together, wrapped in a quilt, and buried them up on a grassy plateau by my daddy's grave, with a view of our holler. Lots of folks came to the funeral. The Donnelly sisters were there, of course, and my friend, Jules, and her ma, Irene. A whole slew of miners stood back a ways, clumped together like coal, their faces all shadowy gray. They must have come right from the night shift that let out that morning, but the day shift was glaringly absent. That was back when I was 7, and things still haven't changed. Far as I can tell, here in eastern Kentucky, nothing ever does. The mines don't stop working for nobody, Pawpaw says, not even for one of their own. Mr. Barkley, the owner of the mine, didn't even have the decency to show up for Mama and little Zeb's funeral. Pawpaw said it had something to do with not wanting to show culpability, which at the time was a word I didn't understand. The manager of the mine was standing with the others, though Antoine Martin, a fancy name that no one had the patience for, so they called him Antsy for short. Folks says he's always fidgeting about something, but that day he was standing stock still. All through Amazing Grace, I gave him my evil eye. Preacher Jones handed me the shovel after he said a few words. I guess he wanted me to throw down some dirt, but I threw the shovel instead. It clunked and clattered against the wooden casket as a hush settled on everyone there. No words seemed big enough for the mad I felt. Later, Pawpaw told me, I said, "This whole thing is absolutely futile," before I broke from his arms and ran all the way home. Futile, that was the word for the week, as you might have guessed. Pawpaw and I couldn't bring ourselves to use it again after that, but the word sat between us nonetheless. Guess I should tell you something about myself. My name's Curley Hines. Well, actually, it's Michael Weaver Hines, but my folks started calling me Curley on account of my hair. I added the E in grade school so it wouldn't look so girly. I think it helps. Anyway, Michael and Hines I get from my daddy. Weaver's from my mama's side, and Pawpaw's last name. Both sides of my people are Scotch-Irish. Both sides of my people are Scotch-Irish, come over from the old world to settle in the new. The way Pawpaw tells it, they pushed west until they recognized the green of the hills and called Appalachia home. I may as well tell you I have a girlfriend. She lives down the holler from me, and her name's Julia Kavanaugh, or Jules for short. I told her once that her name reminds me of treasure, and she kind of liked the idea. Our mothers were friends when we were babies. They'd pack us up on hot summer days and take us to play in the creek or pick wildflowers up on Red Hawk Mountain. We like to say we've got history, which of course is true. I know her better than anybody besides my family. Come to think of it, I guess I know her more. My birthday's this Tuesday, so Pawpaw said I could invite any friend I wanted over for Sunday dinner to celebrate. He said it that way on the off chance I might invite somebody other than Jules. Not that he has anything against her. He's just always saying I need to widen my circle, which means he doesn't want me to get too attached to anything, friends or mountains, that will keep me from eventually leaving home. I know he means well, but I think I'm a lost cause. I've been attached to these mountains since I was born, like my umbilical cord was lassoed around their tops. I know that sounds extreme, and maybe even gross, but that's how it feels. And then, after Ma and little Zeb died, The mountains were the only thing that kept me from flying apart. Them and Pawpaw, of course. Jules understands this. She loves the mountains, too. Pawpaw sighed when I told him I'd invited Jules, but then he said, "Well, good. And that my birthday is January 21st. It often falls on a C word. Pawpaw spends extra time flipping through the dictionary the week before, looking for just the right one. During last year's birthday week, my word was collaborate, the kind of word that Pawpaw hopes will stick with me and guide my ways. Pawpaw's always reminding me that words are more than a mishmash of letters and sounds. Words are thoughts, and thoughts are things, he says, which makes no sense to me. But he promises I'll grow into the idea. Pawpaw seems particularly pleased with his pick for this year's birthday word. He's been chuckling about it all week. I've been yammering for a hint all day, but he says he wants to wait for Jules to get here before he gives me my first clue. Jules makes an entrance, as usual. I mean, she doesn't mean to. She doesn't even know she does. It's just that when she's not there, something's always missing. And when she's there, the room seems all of a sudden full. And that's how it is when she bursts through the front door, all red-cheeked and breathy, her frizzy black hair bushing out from under a blue knit cap. "Brought you something?" she says, slapping a square-looking package against her jeans to shake off the snow before handing it to me. "You can open it after dinner, I guess." The package is wrapped in burlap and tied with a scrap of yellow silk ribbon, probably from her ma's sewing basket. Jules and her ma go up to the Kmart in Fraley'sburg on a regular basis, so it's not as if wrapping paper isn't available. As Pawpaw explains it, Mrs. Kavanaugh was raised by a couple of back-to-earth hippies and prefers to make do with what she's got. "Hey, Mr. Weaver, what's cooking?" Jules calls to Pawpaw, throwing her coat on a rack by the door and brushing by me on her way to get to the kitchen. "Gee, thanks, Jules," I say, looking down at my present. You'll never catch Jules being sentimental about anything, incidentally. Not birthdays, not holidays, not puppies or kittens, not love, especially not love. That didn't used to be a problem. I know I said she was my girlfriend, and she is. I've even heard her call me her boyfriend to her friends at school. But, and this is a big but, she always adds, just not in that way. Like I said, that didn't used to be a problem. "I'm thinking of a word and it begins with C," Pawpaw says, beginning the word game we play every Sunday. He gives Jules the silverware and me the plates to set the table. "This one's a little different from your usual birthday word, Curley. Now that you're entering your man years, you need to find a way to articulate, first word last year, what a puzzle this world can be." Pawpaw always pauses at the clues when it's time to guess, so I can tell puzzle is one of them. So does Jules. "I think this one's a stumper," she says carefully, setting the forks to the left and the knives to the right of the plates. "What do you think, birthday boy?" "It's right on the tip of my tongue," I lie as I look at her across the table. All I can think about is the way her tawny skin dimples when she smiles, creating a tiny cave in only one of her cheeks. I've wanted to stick my finger into that dimple for as long as I can remember, but I figure she'd kill me if I ever tried. "Well, I'm sure there's no problem the two of you can't figure out when you put your heads together," Pawpaw says, chuckling, "even if it seems unsolvable." Jules plops herself down in Ma's rocker by the cook stove, drawing her knees up under the oversized flannel shirt that she's wearing. She gets those rocker legs rolling tip to tip so hard they make the oak floor rumble. I think this was a vocabulary word in Miss Rosen's class last year, Curly, Jules says over the thunder she's making. You know this one. Then all of a sudden, it pops into my head, like Jules willed it there. I remember it because we spent an entire day in Mrs. Rosen's class making up riddles and puns that made absolutely no sense at all. Conundrum? Is that it, Pawpaw? He smiles and nods. Oh, that was easy, I say, like I ever would have gotten it without Jules zapping it over to me on that telepathic highway of hers. Easy to say, maybe, but never easy to understand. Pawpaw stirs the gravy. Life's a conundrum, my friends. Some mysteries were never meant to be solved. Just then we hear a thump, thump, thump at the front door. Who could that be? Pawpaw raps the gravy spoon twice on the side of the cast iron skillet. Curly, go see who it is. I swing the door open with what must be a goofy grin on my face. Honestly, I think maybe it's a surprise visitor for my birthday, although I can't imagine who that would be. The last person I expect to see is Auntie Martin. Hey, Curly. He nods at me and takes off his cap. He always does that. It's like he's paying respects to the dead every time he sees me. Mr. Martin? I nod back. I'm not about to invite him in. Neither is Pawpaw when he shows up beside me. Auntie? What the heck? Pawpaw stretches his long arm out and leans against the door frame, like he's borrowing the way in. Curly, you and Jules go put milk on the table. I'll take care of this. As I turn to leave, I overhear Auntie saying, Sorry, John. I know you told me never to come by when the boy might be home. He's talking in a low, raspy voice, but I can hear him as clear as rain on a tin roof. It's like my ears get all supersized. When I hear he's talking about me, I hide behind the coat rack to listen. Yeah, that's right, Martin, which is why this better be good. When Pawpaw draws his words out all slow and easy like that, you know you're in trouble. But what can Auntie possibly want on a Sunday afternoon? And what's so all-fired secret that they don't want me to hear it? That's just it, John. It isn't good. There's a long pause while Auntie clears his throat and spits. I'm assuming he does that right outside the door, and I gag silently, thinking about it sitting there on the porch all brown and globby. John, the mine's getting a new owner. Barkley is selling out to some big corporation up in Indiana, and the new owner is coming down next week. I guess this is big news for some in these parts, but for the life of me, I can't figure out why Auntie thinks Pawpaw would even care. It's no secret that Pawpaw's not exactly a friend of Cole, although since Mom and Zeb died, he kept what he calls his spit and vinegar to himself. You'd think it would be the opposite, but when I gave him an I Love Mountains bumper sticker for his van last Christmas, he used it for a bookmark, shut up all tight between the pages of his dusty old spy novels. Speaking of spies, my eyes just about popped out of my head when I see Auntie hand Pawpaw a short, padded white envelope. This may be the last one of these, Auntie says as Pawpaw stuffs the envelope into his front pocket. I'm standing behind the coat rack, scratching my head over what I've just seen. When Pawpaw turns around and sees me, I swear he's got eyes in the back of his head. Go on, boy. This doesn't concern you. I gave you a job to do. He nods toward the kitchen, so I skedaddle on out of there. I'm chewing on what might be in the envelope as I return to the kitchen and see Jules still rocking away. Any thoughts of intrigue melt at the sight of her, sitting there all dreamlike, gazing out the window at the falling snow. She doesn't even look up at me. I pull the milk carton from the top shelf of the fridge. It's got the face of one of those missing kids on the back of it. He's got curly hair just like me. Hey, Jules. I put the carton up next to my face so she can see the resemblance. Do you think I might have another family somewhere? I'll do anything to get her attention. But Jules just keeps on rocking. Obviously, she's not in the mood for goofing around, which has been happening a lot lately. Girls are a conundrum, that's for sure. So, how about grabbing some glasses down from the cabinet then? I asked, taking a swig of milk from the carton. Now she's staring at me with those soulful brown eyes of hers, and I wonder if she's got a crush on me, since I'm turning 12 and all. But no. Oh, right. I roll my eyes at her. Please. I squeeze out the word please, like it's a blob of crusty old toothpaste at the end of a rolled up tube, and then I stick my tongue out at her for good measure. She slides out of the rocker, ignoring me as usual. Sometimes it feels like we're married. Anything wrong? Jules jerks her head in the direction of the front door. She sets the glasses down in front of each plate, and I pour. Nah, just Auntie Martin for Pawpaw and some kind of business. I think it's about a conundrum or something. She looks over at me and grins. Well, now where were we? Pawpaw lumbers back into the kitchen, rubbing his hands together like he's just come back from the bathroom, and not some covert operation. Oh, that's right. Life's a conundrum, and there's a meatloaf in the oven. He sounds so lackadaisical about whatever just transpired with Auntie that I almost believe it isn't anything to fret about. But then I notice the top edge of that envelope sticking out of his pocket, and all I can think is payoff. Come on, you two. Dinner's ready. Pawpaw pulls my birthday meatloaf and a tray of biscuits out of the oven, and the smell just about knocks me over. My stomach starts growling like I haven't eaten in days. Whatever Pawpaw's conundrum is about, I'll think on it later. After dinner, we retire to the living room, where Pawpaw stokes the fire in the wood stove and gets it blazing. He eases himself into his overstuffed chair. This is the time of the evening when lots of families in Wonder Gap are turning on the old boob tube, as Pawpaw would call it, and watching Celebrity Tonight or Gossip Hollywood about all those movie stars. Or maybe they've been watching football all day long. Believe me, I've been campaigning for cable ever since I could talk. But Pawpaw says owning a TV is bowing to mediocrity. M-word last April. Which basically means it turns your brain to mush. When I gave Pawpaw the TV as educational argument, he handed me an issue of National Geographic and said there were hundreds more like it where that came from. Curley, your very own Discovery Channel is waiting for you right up those attic stairs. I haven't asked for a TV, or a computer for that matter, since. Jules lies across from me against the opposite arm of the couch. We throw one of Mama's quilts over us and stretch out our legs until our toes touch. I guess it's the warmth of the room and a full stomach that makes me let down my guard and start bragging. Pawpaw, the only conundrum I can't figure out tonight is why you picked such an easy word. Jules and I could have done way better than that. I like to cast Jules and me as a team any chance I can get. That doesn't stop Pawpaw from seeing an opening the size of a barn door and driving a truck through it. Well, now, you've got a point there, Curly. I bet you could do better than me. Pawpaw sits there, his head propped up in his broad, calloused hand, looking at me with those piercing blue eyes of his. Maybe it's time you picked your own words. Dang! The last thing I want to do is spend more time with my head in a dictionary. I don't like where this conversation is going, and I need a diversion fast. That's when Jules saves the day by putting me in a different kind of trouble. Here, Curly, open your present. She pulls it out from under the covers and throws it at me, where it lands squarely in my lap. It feels like a book, I say, stating the obvious. She has this effect on me. Well, duh, yeah, she says. I have this effect on her. I pull the ribbon loose and the burlap falls away. The book has a brown leather cover, but no title, and the pages are blank. Gosh, Jules, just what I always wanted. A book with no words. I guess you could say it's a fast read. I crack myself up. Paw too. And I guess Jules doesn't think it's so funny. She kicks me into the covers and just about jams my big toe. It's a diary, stupid. Her dimple shows up, so I know she's not really mad. But that's not how you're going to use it. Paw raises his left eyebrow. Well, that's a relief, I sigh. You know how I hate to write. That isn't entirely true, and she knows it. I try my hand at short stories once in a while, when we have to write something for English, and I always choose Jules to be my reader. It's not for writing exactly, at least not in that way, you think. It's for keeping track of your Paw's words, like keeping a dictionary. Well, that makes me speechless, mainly because I'm not sure how much work this dictionary idea is going to entail. Jules keeps talking about how Paw's leaving me a legacy, like a hope chest of words, and how I should have a place to keep them. So I guess you could say Jules has saved me. No way Paw's going to make me pick my own words now. After Jules finishes her explanation, Paw winks at me. Jules keeps tapping my foot under Mama's quilt, like she's stepping on the gas, real gentle-like. Even though it feels like she gave me homework for my birthday, I'd let her drive me just about anywhere. Thanks, Jules, I say. You're a gem. She usually hates it when I say that, but she knows I have mixed feelings. She cocks her head all apologetic-like and grins back at me. Her gift falls open, its pages all naked and white. And the chapter ends with the word conundrum. It is a noun. First definition: a kind of riddle based upon some fanciful or fantastic resemblance between things quite unlike. A puzzling question, of which the answer is or involves a pun. Definition number 2: a question to which only a conjectural answer can be made. And that is the first chapter of Saving Wonder by Mary Knight. I hope you enjoyed this new selection that's been added to our library. Thanks to the COBAA grant with funds from the Institute of Museum and Library Services and the State Library of Ohio. And I love on the back where it says, "Can the power of words save a mountain?"